Hello and welcome to School of Devs. On this channel, we transform aspiring developers into skilled blockchain experts across various blockchain network. In today's video, we'll be learning about Struct and how to use Struct and how to declare Struct, initialize them, fetch them, use them, and organize your data. Imagine you are creating a smart contract for a game. You need to store a player's name, score, wallet address. Using many variables can be confusing. What if you could group all that information in one place? That's where Struct comes in. In this video, I will show you how to use Struct to keep your Solidity code simple and organized. Alright, now let's jump into writing the code. Now, firstly, we start by declaring our license identifier. Now, we declared our license identifier as MIT, meaning it's an open source code, and we also declared a compiler version, meaning this is the compiler version that the code will be working with. Then we declared the word contract followed by the name of the contract. Now let's write a struct. A struct is like a box that holds many pieces of related information. So it has a property which is linked to its values. Now a struct is different from variable because a struct can hold more than one information within uh, itself, while a variable just stores a single value. Now let's declare the struct. So we'll firstly say declare the keyword struct, then the name of the struct, we call it player. Now within the struct, within the struct we have to store a player's information. So instead of writing it separately with different variables, we are writing it in a single struct. So the struct will be holding all the information of the player. So first of all, declare the type of the information, which is string, then the property, which is name. So this struct is holding this information about the player, the name of the player, the score, the age, and the wallet address. Unlike a variable, for example, let me write how a variable will hold the information. So in order to hold this information which we have written within the struct, we will need more than one variable to store it. So that's why it's well organized when we use struct to hold piece of related information together. Now in a variable, we will use so if we were working with variables, each variable will be storing its separate value. So these are the variables that will store separate value, but we are instead of having its separate variable storing each value, we want container which is like which is a struct to hold the piece of information related information together. So instead of using the variable, we use struct, which make our work data more organized. Now this is an array that will be holding the info informations of each players. So once the information is created to be pushed or stored within this array, so this array will be holding the piece of information of each players. Now let's learn how a struct can be initialized. Now that all we have done over here is that we've just declared the struct, but in this function we will be initializing the struct. So let's declare the function. We'll call it initialize struct. So we'll be passing in the parameters. Now, there are three ways we can initialize a struct. We can initialize a struct by just imputing their name, the values directly without calling the properties, without writing the properties. For example, I want to push. Now, I have initialized. So now this is the first method or first way of initializing a struct. We just call the name of the struct and we imputed the value directly without calling the properties against the value. So we just imputed the value, but when doing it this way, we have to impute the value in same manner at which we declared the properties within the struct. So in the struct, we can see that the name came first. So we are writing the name first, followed by the score, the age, and the wallet. So in that same order, that is how we imputed the value. So this is the one method of initializing a struct. Now let's write the second method. Now in this second method, you can see that we are assigning, we call the properties and assign the value to them. So we are assigning the value against the properties, unlike the first one that we just imputed the values without writing the properties at it's assigned to. But in this second method, we wrote the name of the properties before writing the value that is assigned to that property. So now this is the second way of initializing struct, where we write the name of the property, then assign the value to that property, write the name of the second property, then assign the value of the second property to that property. Now, the third way of writing struct is now the third way we initialize this struct is that we declared a variable called player of type player, which is the struct type. Then we set the player dot name. We are accessing the name and we are assigning the value to the particular name, to that name. So firstly, we we declare the variable name player, and this variable has a type of player information, the struct type. Then we assess the name, then assign the value to it. Assess the player dot score. We are setting the score, then assigning the value to it. We are assessing the age and also assigning the value to it. Likewise for the wallet. So these are the three ways of initializing a struct. So firstly, we declare the struct over here. We declare the struct. Then we initialize the struct and push them. In this first one, we assign the value directly without calling the name of the properties of the struct. In the second one, called we wrote we wrote the properties and assigned the name, the value to it. While in the third one, we declared a variable of type player struct. Then we could access. So it's now having the variable is now a type of information that is not that struct type of information. So the variable is a struct type of information. So which means it has the name, it has property, it has age, it has wallet. So we can assign value to each property that it has. So then before we pushed it into the array. Now let's write a function on how we can fetch data from our struct. The next function will be fetching the struct data and we'll be displaying each of the individual data properties within the struct. So let's write a function for that. Now we declare the function and we named it first struct. Now we're passing in index. This index is to fetch the, remember that the struct is being stored within an array. So we'll use this index to first fetch the struct from within the array first of all before displaying, before retrieving each individual data from the struct. This is a visibility public, which means it can be interacted with, the function can be interacted with outside the contract. Then this is view. This view means that we are just reading from the state variable. We are not changing any of the value. Then we are returning the individual item within the struct. We have to change the return type to address. So what we what we did in this function is that we retrieve the struct from the array, because the struct was stored within the array. The user's information was stored within the array, and the array can hold more than one user's information. So in order to get the particular individual information, we have to pass the index, which will help us to fetch the exact user information that we are looking for. So if the user information that we want to fetch is within the array and it is linked to number two within the array, so we have to pass in the index two to fetch that particular user's information or struct. So after fetching it from the array, we stored it within this player variable. So, and it's of type player struct. So it's having all the properties of player struct. Then we are able to return each item within the struct. So this is how to fetch um, data from a struct. In the next function, we'll be learning how to update the struct. So let's quickly write the function. Now in this function, like I said, we'll be updating the struct and we are passing in the index. Remember I told you what the index is being passed for, and then we are passing in the name in a situation whereby we want to update the name or update the score or update the age or even the wallet. So now let's write the logic. Now what we did in this function, we retrieve the struct as usual from the array. Then we stored it within this variable that we created here. No, and this variable we said it is of a type player struct. So meaning it has all the necessary properties that player struct do have. Then we assess each of the properties and assign the name to it, assign the value to it rather. So, and we use this word storage, meaning it will be accessed stored within the blockchain, and since we are modifying it, it means the data will be stored and within the blockchain. So we are modifying and storing, ensuring that the modified data is also stored. We are retrieving the stored data from the blockchain and also ensuring that the modified data is also stored within the blockchain. So this is how we can declare struct, initialize struct, fetch a struct, assign value to a struct, and even update a struct. So in doing this effectively, it helps the developer to organize the data in the smart contract in a effective and um, efficient manner. So if you found this video really helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Liking the video will make the video get to other persons that are having similar interest to learn about it. So see you in our next video.